Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Of course, it goes without saying that I'm not a big fan of sports at all, but we do have to talk about it occasionally, largely because sports is indeed a large part of the culture. Why? It is a microcosm of the culture. That's the reason why. It's a reflection of where the society stands and where it's been. Recently, of course, college athletes have been able to make money off of their name, image, and likeness, and while the general public at large isn't too terribly bothered by this, the white media is absolutely beside themselves. They don't like this at all, and so they've been using their media monopoly to attack black college athletes. If they hear about you getting a nickel, they're going to be writing some unflattering hit piece about you. Now, being the white media, and in particular these white sports reporters, they always put a slant on these stories. They talk about, in this case, the University of Michigan. This guy says that the University of Michigan's playing by the rules and getting left in the dust. Rules? What the hell rules? And then he says they're getting left in the dust, and after that he goes in on NIL. So what we have here is making a false association. That's a tactic of rhetorical deception. Now, for those of you who don't know, making a false association is when you take two completely unrelated subjects, like, say, the failure of the University of Michigan to get the recruits that this writer seems to think they're entitled to, and the advent of NIL deals, and he mentions them both together in the same story. Two largely unrelated things, but by mentioning them together, it makes people think that there must be some sort of connection. A leads to B, right? No. This is a common propaganda tactic. And this guy's whining continues. Under the guise of NIL, many teams have just flat out bought recruits and transfers. Now price tags are going to come with any recruitment. I don't know how to break it to Johnny Whitebread, but these schools have always been giving incentives to these college recruits. The only difference is now it's more out in the open. And these universities, they've been making billions off of their college and football programs. For decades, college hoops and college football have been huge revenue generators for these schools. Everybody from the schools to the corporations who sponsor the games to the advertisers to the boosters and the bookies have all gotten rich off of college sports. That means they get rich off of these black athletes. They're the reason that anyone even cares about these college teams. But he doesn't say a word about that. If he's upset about rumors that some college athletes are getting $1 million deal to go to a particular school, then why isn't he furious about how much money these schools have been getting all along? Apparently this guy isn't just new to sports, he's new to planet Earth. And then he gets to the heart of this hit piece, the reason that he wrote it. Because being a sports reporter for the white media, you know he's got a personal axe to grind. Guys like him absolutely hate black men in sports because a lot of these guys, and I mean a lot of these white sports reporters, tried and failed to make it in sports, and they're still bitter and angry with the black athletes who did. See, sports is pretty much the last pure meritocracy that white supremacy wasn't able to game the system on, and they resent it. So when they weren't able to game the system, a lot of them washed out and went into the white media instead, where these white media outlets give them all the space and all the airtime they want to attack black people by proxy. So of course this guy predictably singles out a black athlete to be the subject of his hit piece, That Train Is Never Late, and he claims that this one young man had originally committed to go to Miami before changing his mind and going to the Gators instead, and then he comes out and says it. Not only was he apparently promised an exorbitant amount, he signed a contract ensuring he'd receive it. Well, there's nothing illegal there. It's all above board, and it's his prerogative to change his mind. But who the hell is this guy to claim that this young man was promised an exorbitant amount of money? He's saying too much. That's what exorbitant means. This is too much. I guess he truly hasn't been looking to see how much money these schools and universities have been making off of these black athletes. Now these white sports reporters will be the main ones who talk about capitalism and how you get what people perceive to be your value, and you can't be angry at someone for negotiating a good deal for themselves, but apparently their love of capitalism takes a holiday when talking about black people who are winning. Keep in mind, this guy in the story, he actually does mention that perhaps this young man didn't get as much money as the rumors are saying, but he still didn't like it regardless. That's the point. That's what his real point is. This guy's problem isn't that this young man was given an exorbitant amount of money. His problem is that the young man got any money at all. You see, young money is only bad when young black people are getting it. This guy could have talked about some white college athletes who were getting made promises of money to go to this or that school, but he didn't do that because that wasn't the narrative. But the subject isn't a white athlete because it would never be about them. This is what it's always been about, pushing an anti-black narrative. Hey, you're giving these niggers money and you need to stop. This is not about having the schools paying less money. This is about the schools paying no money, going back to the old normal. That's why at the end he wrote that he blames the schools for promising so much money to these athletes. That's what this is about, putting pressure on these schools. Quote, your desperation and greed will ruin the sport unless somehow, some way we can put some of the toothpaste back into the tube. Desperation and greed, he says? Greed? So apparently when you pay somebody money, that makes you greedy. When you take money that you've got in your pocket and you pay it to somebody else, that means you're greedy, according to this guy. He's saying that because they're paying athletes money, not because the schools are keeping it like they've been doing for the last century almost, but because now these schools are feeling the heat. These schools are feeling compelled to have to pay these athletes at least some of the money that they're actually worth. Again, if he wanted to talk about these schools being greedy, why doesn't he talk about how for over a century these colleges and universities kept all that money from college sports that these black athletes have been generating? They wrote rules specifically meant to prohibit these black college athletes from being able to make any money off of the fame that they had earned in sports. The only ones who were making money off of college sports were these white university administrators. They used every underhanded and probably illegal tactic they could to make sure that they never had to split one thin dime with these black players. Now that's greed. But this guy doesn't seem to know what the word even means. That schools are now having to compete financially to get the students that they want, that's not greed. Using every dirty trick you can to keep from paying the players for the money that they generate, that is greed. The white media never changes, mainly because there's no cure for stupid. When LeBron James was first drafted into the NBA, there was all of this phony outrage by white commentators who hated that a black teenager was getting endorsement deals and huge contracts, more money than they, their children, or about 10 generations would ever see. It makes them feel insecure. This is not the America they knew and loved. It's wrong is what it is. That's what was going through their heads. This is wrong. I got to look at these guys and see all their success. You're just rubbing it in our faces. Yes, so much for their love of capitalism. So much for you should be able to go as far as your talent and effort will take you. Now, they couldn't say what exactly was wrong with LeBron James getting those endorsement deals. LeBron James is and was a clean-cut guy, better than the reprobates that the suburbs so often produce. And we keep having these same people lecturing black people that there's nothing standing between us and opportunity. Why, if black people just worked harder, it's all a meritocracy. But when a black teenager actually wins, they lose their minds. They show what they really think. For the beneficiaries of white privilege, black poverty is reassuring. It's reassuring and comforting because what it does is it reminds them and it reassures them that the pecking order is still solidly in place. Nothing has changed. There's no danger or threat to their guaranteed position in the society. So that's what they like to see. They want to see black folks down and out. And the main line they used to try to conceal their blatant racism was, well, LeBron James, he's so young, you see. That's the problem. He's so young. What does this say about America giving all this money to a young person? Now, you have young white teenagers getting millions of dollars all the time, much of it illegal, and these same people don't complain about that. They don't even say boo about it. In fact, they celebrate it. And those white teenagers usually destroyed themselves with that money. They wind up dead from an overdose, dead from a car crash, losing their minds like Britney Spears did. But Forbes magazine and others, they don't ask, why are we giving all this money to young people? Isn't it wrong to do that? What does this say about the society? In fact, it's magazines like Forbes and Fortune magazine that actually celebrate young white millionaires. Oh, they make into cover stories. If you take a look at everybody from Sam Bankman-Fried to Elizabeth Holmes, you see that these people were on the covers of these white publications. They were celebrating them before they turned out to be felons. They're furious that their guaranteed place in the society is being threatened by competition, merit. That's what they're angry about, which is what white supremacy was created to prevent. White supremacy is about giving those classified as white guaranteed outcomes in their favor. Outcomes not based on merit or even effort, but based solely on skin color. After 500 years, you can't expect somebody to quit that cold turkey. And we're seeing that this same white neuroses is playing itself out with these college NIL deals. See, what they want is to start capping the money that these mostly black athletes can make. That's what they want to do, because that's what they were able to do in the rest of the society. But of course, they'll put loopholes in there that will enable schools and other criminal organizations to selectively racially discriminate and still float the big money to white athletes while intentionally leaving out the black ones. See, that would be the world turned right side up again, in the minds of these white media sports commentators. By the way, on a side note, Caitlin Clark is still losing. Meanwhile, Angel Reese has bought a stake in a soccer team. Now, if anyone should be the poster girl for pro-female athletes, it's Angel Reese. But she's the wrong color. If she was white, she'd be wall-to-wall, on the cover of Forbes and Fortune magazines, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, the works. They'd be celebrating her as the smartest young up-and-coming rich person, 30 under 30. Oh, look at this young athlete. She's just breaking down doors. Oh, you go, girl. That's what they would be saying if she was white. But she's black. And that means she's the wrong color to be the face of success. This isn't about sports because it never is. It's about society. You have college kids who make money while still in school, and nobody's bothered by that if they're white. This is about demonizing and stigmatizing black athletic success, especially young black success. They couldn't keep all the money, so now they're trying to start this propaganda offensive to say that if they have to pay you, then you're undeserving, or you shouldn't be getting it at all. These schools shouldn't be paying so much. In fact, don't pay anything at all. They couldn't stop the genie from getting out of the bottle, but they're still determined to make sure the genie doesn't go granting any wishes. Let's hope that these aspiring $40 million slaves get some business savvy and start putting their heads together. They're up against an organized offense. They're going to need an organized defense. Black athletes built professional sports, period. Without black athletes, professional sports would basically be like curling or something. And for so long, the black athletes got absolutely nothing for all of the effort they put out and all of the money that they generated. For the longest time, the black professional athletes were working for low pay and the black college athletes were working for free. The scam couldn't go on forever. So if these white sports commentators think that black athletes are going to go back to working for free simply because they don't like the fact that these guys are getting paid, they need to wake up. Because this day was inevitable. It was going to happen sooner or later. Of course, that doesn't make it any easier for them to accept it. They don't have to accept it. The only thing that they need to know is that from now on, when it comes to black people, especially in sports, they're going to be getting points all right. And not just the points that they score on the field, but also the points that go along with the money they're supposed to be making. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Donnie Felton, Suleiman Alaji, Alvin McCoy, DSC Bland, and Earl Gates. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.